Sarah go, and then we'll wander right through.
So I'm Sarah Novotny. I lead open source strategy for Google Cloud Platform, and I joined you all here last year announcing that I was joining the board of the node.js Foundation. That is, you'll hear this morning in the keynote why Google really wants to do this and why Google invests so heavily in open source. I also sit and was helped found the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, and I sit on the board of the Linux Foundation as well. So there's lots and lots of opportunity and lots of experience in these groups to talk about how foundations can do well, how foundations can do better, and how we can help make sustainable open source a reality.
Hi, my name is Dan Appelquist. This is actually my first, and I work for Samsung, and I am the board member to the JS Foundation for Samsung. This is actually my first JS Interactive, Node.js Interactive event. I haven't been traditionally that active in the JS community, but I have been extremely active in the web community. So I've been a participant in W3C web standards for over a decade. I chair a group in W3C called the Technical Architecture Group, which is, we have Tim Berners-Lee on the group. He's the only famous person I know, so I have to drop his name every once in a while. And right now I'm leading a team of open source developers in Samsung Research UK, which has been responsible for, amongst other things, the JerryScript project, which is donated into JS Foundation. Let's see, and I'm also working on web standards and our web browser, basically. So I've been participating in this work for the past, I don't know, since I joined the board, basically, maybe a year ago or so. And, from what I can see and from the feedback that I've received from the community, I think this makes a lot of sense. So I'm very happy to be able to answer questions on this, and hopefully we can help to make this happen.
Morning, everyone. I'm Gaurav Seth. I work I represent Microsoft in the Node.js board. I've been doing work with JavaScript, web, Node.js for almost put together about last 15 to 18 years. I'm pretty excited about this whole merger because for me, as I said, I've been working at the intersection of JavaScript, web, backend with Node, and to me, this is this merger really brings the togetherness of all the technologies that can work together to create synergies that we would love to see in the ecosystem. Back at Microsoft, a couple of things I've worked on, and I'm kind of deeply involved in are things like TypeScript, the Chakra JavaScript engine, and now I'm working on the Edge browser. Just moved there, so.
Hi, Tracy Hines. I sit on the Node Foundation Board of Directors as the Community Committee Director. Previous to that, I was an employee of the foundation as the Education Community Manager. I've spent a lot of my recent years helping build communities in the JavaScript ecosystem, some specifically in Node, more around community-related conferences with JavaScript and web development overall. So it's been an interesting process in seeing how we can include more of these folks together as our day-to-day work very much tends to circle around both.
Hi, I'm Miles Borens. Also work at Google Cloud with Sarah as a developer advocate. I am the Technical Steering Committee Director on the Node.js Board of Directors. I've been working with the project for coming on 3 years and have been actively involved in the process of discussing the merger, socializing it with people, and also helping to run these public town halls. I guess a little bit that I can add to that, a flourish is, I think Node is part of a really big picture of web technology that we're all relying on for, on one hand, the technologies and things that we do, but also from our own careers and abilities to be professionals. So I think, at least for myself, and I know not everyone agrees, but a merger that we're discussing here opens up the scope for Node to be part of a much larger picture And I know for at least myself, I see that as a way of kind of opening the doors to a lot of other things I can be doing in my career. And so I think that it's really important to be kind of, I'll quote Scott Hammond, another board member, when Node and IO merged. I kind of showed up and no one knew who I was, and I walked right up to Scott at Node Summit. And I said, Scott, why would you merge? And Scott said, I'd rather have a smaller piece of a bigger pie. And so that's kind of been ringing true for me through this whole process. And I think Node has a lot to benefit, and the JS ecosystem has a lot to benefit. And as we dive in and see, I think there's a lot of amazing stuff we can be doing for the community and thinking about a broader community in a larger foundation structure. I think with that, we can jump right into some slides.
Yeah, let's go.
Cool. So I guess one of the things to really set the tone that's important here is the merger proposal does not in any way change the independence or of the technical communities that are within the foundations to develop as they develop today. The current idea would be that the technical structures of these organizations are separate. For those of you who are not as familiar with the Node.js technical governance, it's set up in such a way that there's a bit of an air gap between the technical project and the board of directors. In the same way that, the technical project is not coming up and telling the board which lawyer to hire, the board doesn't come down and tell the technical project how to do releases or what commits to land. There's a clear separation there. And there's nothing in this merger that would change that. It's also important to stress that it's an intent to merge. A lot of these things are really easy, early ideas. And as we dig into some of the stuff in this deck, you'll see kind of like the early seeds of the idea that we're going to be working up publicly over the next couple months. So what is the merge proposal? The simplest way to describe it is that the proposal would expand the scope of the current foundations to enable support for Node.js plus a broader range of JavaScript projects and create a home for projects that the JavaScript ecosystem is dependent on for sustaining this model of development. Thinking broader. As projects exist today, it cannot be totally clear if they should be in the Node.js Foundation or the JS Foundation. And we're hoping to make that a little clearer for people. But other goals, broader goals that we're talking about is enabling widespread adoption and help accelerate development of JavaScript and key ecosystem projects across connected devices, servers and networks, user agents and runtimes. JavaScript runs everywhere these days, and we should be thinking about all these different places when we're thinking about what our foundation is supporting and how we're helping people. We want to support a vision of sustainable participation and technical contribution to support productive, diverse, and inclusive communities. Node has done a lot of work for this. The JS Foundation has similarly done a lot of work on their code of conduct, on moderation, on outreach efforts, and this is one of the key components of what this foundation wants to focus on. We want to achieve more efficient and reduce governance, budget, and technical overhead by eliminating numerous redundant efforts. We want to eliminate confusion around the right foundation to support and join. We want to leverage an umbrella project structure to bring stronger affinity across all JavaScript projects, as well as unified leadership and end-user representation and standards efforts. This would be done through an integrated board while maintaining technical project independence. So why now? Well, we're all in the room for this conference. Node plus JS Interactive is a really large gathering for the JS community, and it's a place where we can engage in the community directly. We could talk to you this week. We can get direct feedback. That's really important. It's really easy to lose the human aspect of all of this when we're just sitting behind keyboards. We have some lessons learned over time. When the foundations were created, two different entities made a lot of sense. But it has caused confusion in corporate support, and that's something we can dig into more later. Sorry, 1 second. Excuse me. So corporate, wow, my voice is literally gone now. One more time. Okay, and we're back. So corporate funding cycles align very well with this time frame as well. People are starting to figure out their budgets for 2019, and when we're talking about having new corporate members join the foundation based on this new information, this is a great time to get people, let people know what we're planning, what we're trying to do. And we also want to make something that's future-proof. We want to make a foundation that supports a cohesive JS ecosystem and not any particular individual project. We want something that can outlast any one project. And I think that can maybe be, it could sound controversial, But I think if we ask ourselves, what's going to exist in 20 years, 30 years, 40 years from now, I think we can all agree JavaScript will. It's not going anywhere to, maybe the behest and protest of others. But we don't know for a fact that any one project or any one framework will exist. And so creating this structure, at least in my personal opinion, is a little more future-proof for that future. There are concerns that have been identified in talking to people, whether it be our individual members, people from the project, people from the community. Here are some of the ones that we've outlined already. Projects want to preserve their autonomous governance, and this is extremely important. A change in the foundation should not change the way that projects operate today. And projects also want to maintain independent presence. Node.js doesn't all of a sudden want to have a website that's a landing page for 50 other projects. That's not going to be something that we want. And I doubt that that's something any of the other projects in the foundation want. Projects want the ability to exist in a foundation without additional politics. A really great example of this is libuv. Libuv, as it exists today, would like to just do their thing. They don't want to have to engage in any form of governance that is outside of their own project. They want to continue to get the support from the foundation itself, and we're going to create a system that can allow for that. And similarly, projects want to maintain current access to resources in this larger structure. libuv gets access to the node CI, and it would be a shame if a change in financial structure of the organization changed that for the technical projects. Node.js wants continued allocation to the travel fund. So just a quick poll here. How many people are collaborators or committers on the Node.js project in the room right now? Great. And how many of you have ever used the travel fund? Great. For those of you who don't know, the Node.js project has a fund of about $70,000 a year that you can apply for to go to events such as Node.js Interactive. If you're active in any of the project's working groups or teams, you are allowed to apply for it. And this has been like a huge benefit to people from the community who are not working for large organizations to be able to come, participate, have their voice heard, and be part of our community in ways that wouldn't be possible otherwise. And for myself, we'll have to see what happens. I don't only want to see like Node.js's travel fund exist. I would love to see us find a way to expand this program to other projects as well. I think it's one of the most important things our foundation has been able to do. We want to identify the staffing to run the merged entities. So we need to figure out who the executive director is going to be, what a community director looks like, what kind of focus there is there. We need to make sure there aren't major changes to the community board representation. So as you can see on the stage, Tracy and myself are both community representatives on the board. There's also William Kapka, who's the individual membership representative. And so that's 3 members of the Node.js board, which is 12 people that are representing the community. And we want to figure out a way in the structure to maintain as much of that as possible. It may not be possible from a logistical standpoint. We can't just create random board members. That's not going to work out well for the project. But we want to design a governance structure that allows for this community participation. It's really important to us. There is concern of a potential loss in focus of Node.js itself. It's in the name of our foundation today. It's the central thing that we are supporting. If we are one of many, it's possible that we don't get the same amount of attention. That may also be good. Getting attention all the time is not necessarily the best thing. But people are concerned about the optics of this, and this is something that will be really important when we're thinking about what's the new name, what's the new structure, how do people get access to resources. The CNCF, the Cloud Native Compute Foundation, for example, has Kubernetes in there, and it is a monolith compared to a lot of the other projects that exist in there from a community standpoint, from a funding standpoint. And other foundations have found ways to do this that's productive and doesn't make projects feel left out. That's just something that we have to figure out. There's optics that the merge is further along than it actually is. We're not walking into this room and telling you that we've signed legal documents and the merge is ready to go tomorrow. We're walking in and saying, hey, all the stakeholders have talked. We think that this is exciting. Well, some of us think it's exciting. Some of us are trepidatious. But either way, we haven't locked anything in. And the reason why we're on stage here right now is because we want to hear what people have to say, and we want to work with the community to make something that's going to work for everyone. What is the community committee's role in a broader focused foundation? Maybe Tracy, can you give a quick highlight of what the community committee's role is today?
Yeah, so the community committee was created as a top level committee alongside the technical steering committee. And many foundations in open source have technical steering committees. Far fewer, if any, other than the Node Foundation, have a community committee. They may have something by other name. But the idea is that it takes a lot to run a really large open source project. That can be evangelism, that can be education, so getting people to learn Node in the first place or other parts of JavaScript. The user feedback, so something that's really essential to the project moving forward, the foundation succeeding, is our ability to reach the folks who aren't engaged in the project day to day but are using Node. And as we've heard from statistics, that's millions of people. So that kind of work is essential to us being successful, and it would be really great if we can expand the ideas of that, gathering data for meaningful decisions for the projects moving forward, being able to expand opportunities like the travel fund to everyone, to be more inclusive to people in different time zones. Those sorts of things are really exciting, and I think that's what we would want to look towards with the broader foundation.
Thank you very much, Tracy. And just one other point is the ComCom right now is hyper-focused on Node. And in a broader foundation, should the ComCom continue to focus on just the Node project, or should it focus on the broader foundation? We don't have answers to that. We have proposals and discussions. But it is, a concern that's been raised that this is something we need to figure out. It can't just be happenstance. Finally is minimizing organizational complexity and the level of bureaucracy. Creating a larger structure and a larger umbrella will create new levels of just even integration where multiple projects will have to work together. And we have to figure out a way to structure that doesn't make engaging harder, that doesn't make, for example, one of the things that was discussed was, should there be a way to earmark funds for individual projects? This isn't something that has been decided on, but that's something that could create a toxic competition between projects within the foundation. So while on one hand it would be good to allow projects to have individual funding, we could see negatives to that as well. And again, none of this is stuff that we've decided. It's things that we've been discussing. But figuring out a way to do this, is going to be a challenge. And so what we've done today and what has to be done, we created a subcommittee of the boards, a combination of the JSF board and the Node board, to put together a proposal for both boards about what this merger would look like. That was done. And we also completed a financial analysis of what would a joint foundation look like, what would be the overall finances if we merged both of the finances of the two foundations. People were happy with what that financial analysis said, and that helped us move on to the next step, which was introducing the merger to our top level committee. So that's the technical steering committee and the community committee for the Node project, as well as the technical advisory committee, the TAC, for the JSF. That was socialized with all of the committees so that people could bring their feedback. And there was a vote on both boards to announce the intent to merge. That's what brings us here today. I guess I wish I had been clever enough to add a check mark dynamically to that next point. But we've now announced an intent to merge at Node+JS Interactive. What we have to do moving forward is we need to draft merger documents. We need to get legal documents finalized. We need to begin a search for a new executive director and agree on a name for the merged entity. We need to develop self-governance and project levels. You see here it says CPC. We'll dig into that for a second. It's a proposed new committee called the Cross-Project Council Committee. You see, it's still up in the air. We also need to execute on those legal documents that we're going to draft, as well as identify further staffing. We're still figuring out what a timeline for this looks like. I think some of us are hopeful of Q1 2019, but this will take the amount of time that it takes to do it properly. I just think none of us want it dragging out until the next Node+JS Interactive, because it'd be nice to talk about something else next year. So that leads us into community questions and feedback. So we've had some forums open for the last couple days, and I believe Chris Borchers can come up and join us on stage and has some questions ready from the audience. Also, keep in mind, so there's myself, Miles, we've got Tracy, we've got the board members who are here, and we can identify, actually anyone who's on the Node.js TSC, the Node.js Community Committee, or the JSF TAC, can you please just stand up? Look around the room. These are all people who you can come and talk to about this this week. Any questions you have, concerns you have, bring it to one of the people who are standing. Or sit down right now if you don't want people to come. I guess I didn't give you a heads up about this. But thank you all for being here, and I'm going to pass the mic over to Chris.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, so just, I was getting up here, so I don't know if you said who I am, but I'm the executive director of the JS Foundation. So, yeah, just I'll kind of facilitate the questions, and anybody that wants to jump in and take it. Oh. Hi. Now you can see me. All right, so let's see. I'll do this. All right, so first question. And hopefully everybody saw the link to the form. I don't really have a good way to get that to you right now. It was in the, if you find the press release, it was in there. All right, so first question, but we already have a number of questions, and we only have 30 minutes. Once the two foundations merge, what will be the combined foundation's code of conduct, and what will be the bounds of the activities governed by the code of conduct? GitHub, IRC, Twitter accounts, or other online spaces, conferences, and other physical gatherings.
I've been answering this one for a lot recently. So the answer is it's not decided. You may see a theme here in these answers, but I know that Node.js and I believe the JS Foundation both use variants of the code of the Contributors Covenant. I think they both use. No,
we don't.
You don't. Okay.
We built our own.
You built your own
back in the jQuery days, but it's very thorough. It is based on past art, but it's not. I don't think it was the.
Not that one. So the Node Foundation is based off of the Contributor Covenant. The JS Foundation, I'm told, is very similar, but is based on other prior art. And we see in the industry today a coalescence around the Contributor Covenant. And the more recent versions of Contributor Covenant also include being a public representative of your project in spaces that aren't specifically related to the project. So that is a conversation we need to have, is do we want this to have broader implications? We've seen in a lot of open source communities that leadership is held to a higher standard, as well as the different opportunities to hold your peers accountable in spaces that are project related, but also more broadly. So this is an open question, and I think the answer is we've drafted. I don't think we've shown the draft mission and visions. We've got a draft mission and vision. Again, it's all open for conversation. But in the draft mission and vision, we actually say that we want JavaScript to be an open, inclusive, respectful community, and that is supported by a strong code of conduct, a strong enforcement policy. There's moderation. There's moderation prior art in, I believe, both communities as well. So we can find what the right balance is here and also use this opportunity to improve what we are doing in this space.
One thing I'd love to add to that really quickly, there's a bit of a conflict that you can have with enforcing a code of conduct while also allowing projects their own independence. And so this is something that we do have to figure out as a group. I myself, selfishly, I think it's really important. I don't think that we would want projects that don't have enforced code of conduct as part of the foundation, but it doesn't mean that everyone is going to agree with that. If you're a project that's currently existing in either of the umbrellas that does not have a strong code of conduct or it's not enforced, that is us meddling in their governance, telling them which code of conduct to have and how to moderate it. So these are, I think, one of those questions of balance about how much bureaucracy does the foundation create versus what kind of homogeneous culture do we care about cultivating. And so those are one of the things that we'll be figuring out as we find a balance here.
So Todd and I have had lots of experience with the Cloud Native Computing Foundation and how to balance that. How much do we meddle? How much do we not? How much do we prescribe as governance? How much do we not prescribe? And the only thing that is actually written out as prescribed for the Cloud Native Computing Foundation is you must accept the code of conduct that is defined for the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. And we believe that that makes a healthier community, broadly speaking. Now, that said, there's one other soft recommendation, which is no benevolent dictators, which isn't actually codified, but it's really hard to graduate in there if you have a benevolent dictatorship. So this is a way, and there's lots of experience in other foundations where people have managed this and have navigated it and have not actually had projects feel crushed by the potential and limited oversight.
I just add as well, when I was, and again, this is not set in stone, but we, Miles, Sarah, and I worked on this draft mission and vision statement for the Merge Foundation, and it struck me that this was a real opportunity to do something, to put a stake in the ground that diversity and inclusion need to be part of the core set of values of whatever comes out of this. So I'm really glad that we saw that come through in the document that we worked on together. I think that goes beyond code of conduct and enforcement policy. I think it also goes to things like conference participation regulations. So we have, in my group in Samsung, we have a conference participation policy that none of people in our group will participate in a panel, for instance, unless there are more than one woman on the panel. Thankfully, this panel qualifies, and and stuff like that. So that's the kind of thing that I would like to see us doing more within this Merge Foundation, is promoting and really being very proactive around diversity and inclusion, creating diverse and inclusive spaces.
I think I want to add an example, of a synergy that I saw, given that I talked about. So I work for Microsoft, been running a bunch of JavaScript stuff. A couple of years back, we started making this shift of why, from why open source to why not open source. So every project really needs to start with open source. So, I'll take an example of a project that I was working on, which was our JavaScript engine. When we open sourced it, it's specifically around the code of conduct. We were split. Whom should we go ask about what is the right thing? We ended up working with the node.js because at that point in time, that was a stronger committee. But it's decisions like this. When you have two different foundations, you get split as to where do you go work? Is there a single committee? Are there like two multiple players in the? It was just that we've been pretty involved with the Node project, so we were like, okay, we have a home, so let's just go and start from there. But it'll be synergies like this that are going to be super interesting. So.
All right. Let's see. Next question. How will infrastructural teams like the ComCom moderation team and other groups not specifically chartered as Node.js working groups be merged into the new foundation?
They won't. It's not, so again, with any of the projects, the specific work that's already going on, I guess there's always an opt-in where we have things like the cross-project council, where we can take the awesome work that's happening in these individual projects, and if multiple projects are really excited about something, we can work to learn from one another. The work that we've done and are doing on the moderation team in Node is something that I get asked about quite often because we're trying to do new things. We're experimenting with getting training from professionals so that we can better moderate and facilitate really important conversations with people that we're working with on the other side of the world. And those kinds of things, I think, are really valuable to be able to share stories and challenges or mistakes with, so that we can help the other projects also succeed in the same efforts. The same goes with community committee. Not to say that every one of the projects in the new foundation would need a community committee. it's possible that we could just learn from what we've done in the Node project and help other projects if they are interested, right? It's all about shared values and what people are interested in together in that Venn diagram of care. So it's not that any of that will get merged because, again, we keep autonomy in the model that I think we have not shown on screen. But we have, I think, two different, should we show that now? Yeah. I think this is a good leading off point. We have two different drafts of how the structure could possibly go for this as of yet named new foundation. And I think I'll let Miles dig into this a little further if you'd like. I can do it. I think you run through it.
Hi. So this is one of the earlier potential structures that was proposed. I believe it was heavily worked on by Mike Dolan from the LF and Chris. I believe Sarah, you had, and Todd. I mean everyone. I could just keep naming people. But it was heavily based on the current structure of the Cloud Native Compute Foundation. This structure has the Node+JS board overseeing various business decisions. It's responsible for entity management, budget, membership, approving project charters. This is very, very similar to the current structure of the board. There would be a new council called the Cross Project Council, which we alluded to before. The CPC responsibilities would include identifying areas of cross-project collaboration, identifying and recommending new projects to bring into the community, cross-project policies such as security practices or codes of conduct, identifying opportunities for engaging in standards, and things along those lines. And the membership of the CPC would be made up of representatives from top-level projects. And as in this example, do I have an excuse to use my laser pointer? I think I do. So this is hard on an angle. But here we have a couple different technical steering committees. So you could see the Node.js Technical Steering Committee, the Node+JS ComCom, the ESLint Technical Steering Committee, the jQuery Technical Steering Committee. All of these would be top-level projects in the new structure. And so this would be Node's top-level projects as well as the top-level projects currently existing in the JS Foundation. And each technical steering committee is composed of the lead maintainers and committers of that specific project and is ultimately responsible for managing its own developer communities and its own project and technical direction. There's also an area for community projects and their own communities, and community projects is a home for projects that aren't yet top-level projects or choose not to be top-level projects. LibUV would exist in here, for example, or if you had a project that you would like to bring to the foundation, it would first go in as a community project and then work through a program to join as a top-level project and have representation on the CPC. I believe in this structure, the idea would be that the Cross-Project Council would have a seat at the board. But our various top-level projects had some concerns or thoughts about this particular structure, and this alternative structure was proposed. It's very similar, but it's slightly different. In this one, we have a top-level cross-project council as well as a top-level community committee, both of which would have representation at the board, allowing us to maintain more of our current community representation. Some of the things you'll notice that are different, we do have the top-level projects as mentioned before, but we actually have two different subgroups. We have the incubator being a place where new projects can come in, where similarly projects that don't want to have cross-project council representation can exist. We also have the Commons.js. It is not only a fantastic pun, it's also a great idea of Matteo Collina, who's up here in the front row. The idea of the Commons.js would be, we have a lot of resources in the foundation that we're putting into things like our travel fund or continuous integration resources. And there's a lot of projects that could utilize this that don't necessarily have either, the weight behind it or the interest or the ability to join a foundation. This could even just be like, hey, we don't have the bandwidth today to go through the steps that are required. We would, in this potential structure, we'd actually carve out a portion of the budget of the foundation, as well as a portion of the resources and a portion of our time to focus on supporting the ecosystem at large. This is one of the things that gets me most excited about these new structures is just whole new ways of thinking, programs and initiatives that we could be doing that just are not possible today. You'll notice that the Cross-Project Council has a hand-wavy governance whereby one member from each project is represented in there. We've also proposed an alternative structure similar to the TC39. where each of the top level projects could send as many delegates as they would like to the cross project council. And if ever came down to a vote at the cross project council, then each top level project would have one vote. What you may not know about the TC39 is the only time they ever vote is to vote on the latest draft. Pretty much they work towards consensus, and so the idea of a vote is kind of something that's avoided at all costs. So we're just trying to think about different structures that we can have and how these structures could support engagement from all the people who want to engage and avoid creating hierarchies or power dynamics that don't currently exist. We've done a lot of work, at least in the Node project itself, to readjust some of the power dynamics that existed from when the foundations merged. And I personally am really happy where we're at right now, but we can always do better. And we should be using this as an opportunity to better democratize power and resources in the foundation rather than centralizing it. I'll pop back to this slide so that we're not just distracted by all the pretty boxes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Miles.
Okay. Let's see. Next question. What happens with current sponsor companies from both sides? Do the levels, gold, silver, etc., remain, or will there be a new process?
So our current thinking has been that we'll keep something similar to the Node.js structure, where we have different membership levels, platinum, gold, silver type membership levels. We've done some analysis and we've talked to many companies. Actually, what sort of drove us to this is we were out looking at new members to come and join us. We were continually getting the feedback that there's two of these organizations. Why aren't you just one? How do I decide which one to go put my time, resources, money behind? And so it became apparent that having a single organization and a structure that allowed people to enter and be supporters at what they were comfortable, what level they were comfortable at, made a lot of sense. So we're currently thinking it'll follow along the lines of what we've done in Node, and that gives us a nice revenue base to do the kinds of things that Miles has been talking about. The travel budget and the CI infrastructure and the other things that we do, the staff that we have. Our expenses should come down as a result of this because overall the duplication across the two projects will be reduced. Both projects were buying services from the Linux Foundation staff to help us do the things that we did. And as a result of this, we'll be able to eliminate some of the duplication. So we'll become a much more efficient organization across the whole JavaScript ecosystem, which is nice. And the sponsor companies like that as well, too, because they feel like they're getting the most bang for their buck when they go and do this. So the companies that we've talked to, hey, we get there, Miles. The companies that we've talked to like this as an approach. Hey, fix that, Miles. Okay. Oh, well. There you go. Go ahead.
So I think you're already going there, Todd, but there's another question that this kind of dovetails into, which is that our announcement mentioned streamlined member engagement as one of the expected results of merger. What data do you currently have to suggest that member engagement would improve by a merger? Is there currently a significant overlap in membership between the two projects, or is it anticipated that the overlap would increase by merging?
No, there wasn't. That was part of the financial analysis that we did, and there wasn't a substantial overlap. People were, supporting one or the other. IBM, us, we were supporting both sides, and sponsors, main sponsors on both sides of the fence. But there's very little overlap and duplication. So as a result of this, our financial picture looks very good in terms of that. What else was in part of that?
I think you covered. Oh, what else was in the question?
Anything else?
Oh, just what data or
Oh, yeah,
what
okay.
info
So,
do you have?
and as we talked to companies, we kept a list, and both organizations were out talking to different potential sponsor companies, and so we got the same pattern of response from those, and they were told us that they were much more likely to join, and as we stayed in touch with those companies, they seem much more likely to join. I think we've continued to grow our membership, and we just added another gold. I'm not sure if it's public or not. Another gold sponsor. So anyway, So, but anyway, we'll see this grow as a result.
Awesome. Let's see. Yeah, you answered a couple of questions with that one. Oh, here we go. So the JS Foundation is comprised of dozens of individual projects. How likely is it that Node becomes just another project among many? if this happens, what impact will it have on Node itself?
Yeah, I want to answer that a little bit from the CNCF perspective, though, because having been part of the formation of that and bringing things together, we viewed Kubernetes as the anchor tenant, right? It's like you're building a mall. I'll use a bad analogy, but you're building a mall. Lots of stores are going to be part of that mall, and there's a draw. There's something that brings people to it. And Node is somewhat our anchor tenant in the Node side of things. However, there's great projects as well in the JS Foundation too. So I think we have actually a whole shopping mall complex coming together kind of instantly here, which has a lot of draw. And as a result of that, I think that we will see the ecosystem really come together around us, and we can do far more with JavaScript. And we see in Java as the community as an example, they've done a very similar thing where they've brought all of the world together in the Eclipse Foundation, and they're going out after it in a way that is a pretty strong thing, trying to galvanize what's happening there. This creates for JavaScript that same sort of balance, that same one place to come and see everything around JavaScript. So I expect that all boats will float as a result of this. What we saw in the CNCF was pretty amazing. The projects that became formal projects in the CNCF, when they had other projects that were maybe like them, they got the attention. They're the ones that people have gravitated to. And though our goal is never to pick winners and losers, but by shaping where we think the future is going in that particular area in cloud native, people are following that direction. And as a result, those projects are the ones who are getting the attention and getting a lot of the use. So I expect quite a bit more attention will flow to all of our projects as a result of this. That's what's happened across the CNCF ecosystem.
Does anybody in the audience have a question you want to ask that we haven't addressed yet? We still have one or two more here that we could do, but I'd love to give somebody a chance. Yeah, I'll run a mic out.
So slightly different perspective, but one of the things you touched on financially, as far as businesses not being able to engage because they couldn't decide between, as engineers inside corporations, we also have the same open source pushback as well, where organizations basically like, well, where are you going to sit? How do you know that's the right one to engage with? And we have our own internal struggle. So I guess my question is, how can we start wetting the wheels for this type of merger, start engaging more actively with the combined organization from internally as engineers and leads to start that ball rolling? Because those of us internally who have talked are super excited about the idea of the merger, because it feels like we're going to be able to have more engagement than we can today. So can you just speak to how we can start when we go home next week and start getting that ball rolling a little bit better?
So, often, myself and our ED and Mike Dolan out of the LF and others talk to your corporate members or potential corporate members and engage with them. So pointing them towards us would be really a good thing if they want to understand more about this and how it's going to work and why we see the same discussion we're having here, right? The value that we think this brings from our experience. And we'd be happy to share that with them. And hopefully allow them to see the value that's going to come as a result of this and make it easier for you to participate. So I think that's one of our roles here.
And just to maybe echo some of what you were saying, I mean, as a software professional who works in a big company that participates in open source, I strongly agree with that, because you don't know how many conversations I've had internally in Samsung trying to explain what the difference is between the JS Foundation and the Node.js Foundation, right? And so I actually think this will help in that regard. I think maybe with more communication coming out like this and more public, more transparency, that will help you to bring that message into your organization, hopefully.
One more thing to add. Adam, can you stand up for a second? This is Adam Miller. He's the chair of the community committee. Adam is working on the concept of a bootstrap committee, but we're working on the idea of like how do we actually allow for community participation in the development of this governance. So as an individual, we are going to be talking more about this publicly. If you're coming to the Collaborator Summit, we're definitely going to be talking about it at the Collaborator Summit. But we're going to be spinning up public groups and doing work in the public. So if you want to get involved as an individual, as an engineer, I bet you have great ideas coming from where you're coming from that we don't necessarily have. And the way to do that will be very clear and transparent as we develop those methods.
Sorry to put you on the spot,
I think-
Adam.
I think I saw one more hand. Did someone still have a question, or anybody else? Yeah?
You're a troublemaker, Miles.
So, what would you say is like the one sentence combined elevator pitch? Like the idea basically is that it's simpler and it's easier for donors to understand, you know, that they're putting their money in the right place. So, like, what's the one sentence description of the combined organization?
Yeah, with this, we believe that we're creating an environment for developers and the sponsor members of the organization to participate in a way they couldn't before in JavaScript and completely in the community, such that we can build something much stronger for the ecosystem and for those who contribute to the projects. Make it easier for their lives, make it easier for the sponsors' lives, and as a result of this, grow the interest in JavaScript and take over the world. No, but yeah, but essentially that's it.
Anybody else? We still have a couple minutes. Yeah.
Hello. Hello. All right. So I know that there's been some outreach to the individual projects, right? You know, the TSCs, the existing governance of the projects. Can you touch a little bit on what that outreach has been thus far? Kind of what your process has been for making sure that they're involved in the definition of the new foundation and the governance going forward.
That is a great question. So the first thing that we did was engage with the top level committees as soon as possible. So that was the JSF TAC, the Node TSC, Node ComCom members. And then from there, so there was quite a bit of context shared. So the slides that we've talked through today, many meetings talking through more about how the individual board members had thought through this themselves, what the possibility and opportunities were moving forward. Since then, we've had a couple town halls, so that was with collaborators, and then to the public, and then today. And then, as Miles has mentioned, the next steps are getting us to really do the work. So the boards aren't going to be writing governance for any of the projects. That's not how this works or has worked in the past. So while the boards are working on, drafting what the foundation looks like, the projects will be responsible for if there are changes, right, to the existing governance that they would like to make. But more about how they would see this overarching structure best reflect what everyone would like to be doing, working together moving forward. So the Bootstrap Committee mentioned working at Collaborators Summit, and that's just the start, again, because we live online mostly. A lot of that work will take place online, I'm assuming in meetings and in pull requests. So in the timeline that was shown, one of the things is working on the governance, and that's, again, separate from what the boards work on. And those aren't necessarily going to, because governance is really hard to write, those aren't necessarily going to fall in the same timeline. That's a TBD on like what those deadlines need to be and if they really need to be in the same place at the same time, because governance is living. It's something that we can change. It's what pull requests are for. And then, of course, working with the boards in the small amount of overlap necessary to make sure that we're all aligned on those things.
I think another thing that is really important in all of this in resetting with a new foundation vision is that this is a collaborative effort with the community. Like, this isn't the board tells anyone what to do or the board versus the communities. There is no foundation without the communities. There is no foundation without the projects. There's no purpose in us sitting up here trying to help fundraise for non-existent projects. So we are here to advocate for you. We are here to help you. We are here to get funding for the projects and programs you want to deliver out of your projects. And that is something that I think has been lost in a more divisive space in some of the prior foundations. So when you see something not working, share that with the board. Don't necessarily go out on Twitter and yell about it, but come find someone who's a representative to the board, come find someone who's a representative at the top level committee, talk through it, because we are here as advocates. If we aren't advocating for you, if we aren't fundraising for you, then that means that something is broken or something is a different priority than you expect, and we need to work through that.
I think that's really important because, our role, all of us who spend time in this, we are your advocates. We're out talking to others and trying to make sure that they understand what we're doing here and the importance of it and what it means to the world, and, sharing the feedback and the survey data that we create, and talking to the analysts, talking to the press, making sure people know about what it is you're doing, because it's great work. And that's part of our role as well too. So anything that you can bring to us that we can help make that even better, that's what we'd like to see.
So I know there was, I think, a couple more questions, but we need to wrap. We're out of time, but does anybody have any other final thought you want to throw out there before?
No, just thank you for putting this all together and getting us here. And thank you all for showing up. We didn't know if there'd just be the 4 of us or 5 of us hanging around. So getting up early and participating is really cool, and thank you much for that.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. Go grab yourself a cup of coffee, and keynotes start in about 20 minutes.